What does forgiveness mean? Forgiveness means that we can have peace with God. So I want you to go ahead and close your eyes and let's take a few deep breaths together. God, we welcome your presence here. We ask, God, that you would be with our imagination, that you would use the gift of our imagination today. Come, Holy Spirit. I want you to think back over the past few months and remember some of what we've been imagining about God's love and how God's love helps us to love others. Just think back on some of the things that we've talked about. What does it feel like to know that God loves you and that there's nothing that can separate you from the love of God? Could you take a moment and remember that there's nothing that can separate you from the love of God? Imagine God's love for you is so great, and imagine God's love is like a light that is all around you. You can feel it and see it and even smell it because the love of God is like a fragrant aroma. So imagine the love of God surrounding you. Imagine that it smells like a sweet smelling flower. Imagine that God's love is like the warmth of the sun coming through the window on a chilly morning, or it feels like a cool mist on a hot day. Ask God right now in prayer, just say a prayer, just say, God, would you let me feel your love for me? Just take a moment and ask God to do that for you right now. Now, take a moment and try to bring to mind what it has felt like to be in conflict with someone. Is there anyone at home or at school or in the neighborhood who you've been angry at or maybe hurt by? Try to remember what that felt like. Now imagine what it might feel like to be in conflict with God. Can you imagine that, being in conflict with God? Imagine that you and God have just had an argument and you feel icky towards God. You feel distant. Imagine that you're frustrated, you're angry, and you feel as though something just isn't right in your life with God. Have you ever been frustrated with God? Have you ever been angry with God? Imagine that you and God are having an argument about something. This isn't fair, you say. And then some sort of scales, they start forming on your body like the skin of a snake or a dragon. Your body begins to grow scales, like thick, dragon-like scales. First your arms, and then your chest and your stomach. The scales are now running down your legs and then up your neck and over your face like a mask. Imagine now that your whole body is covered in scales, like a dragon. You look like a dragon. And these scales are covering you so that you can't see the light of God's love around you. You can't smell the sweet aroma of God's love, and the scales are blocking the warmth of God's love on your skin. It's like you're in a cocoon. God's love is all around you, and yet you can't feel it. Something hard has grown over your skin and over your heart and over your eyes and your nose and your ears. You can no longer feel God's love or hear God's voice. What does it feel like to be separated from God's love like this? Try to imagine what this might be like. Imagine you're in the same room as God is, and yet you feel so far away. Can you imagine that? So this is what it feels like to live without Jesus in your life. This is what it would be like without Jesus. And now imagine that you're in this room wanting so badly to experience the love of God again. And Jesus walks into the room with a bucket of water and some towels. Could you imagine Jesus doing that? And he looks at you and he dips the first towel into the water and he begins to wet the scales that cover your eyes. And after a few moments, you can now see Jesus because he's washed off the dragon-like scales that covered your eyes. You watch now as Jesus returns the towel to the bucket of water, wrings it out, and moves to washing your neck and your shoulders. He reaches down and picks up a bottle of oil, and it smells like lavender flowers, and he pours the oil over your head so that the scales come out of your hair. Imagine the oil dripping down to the side of your face. Your eyes are open now to seeing God's love. God's love fills the room like a cool mist, and your ears are open too, and you can hear God's voice and the sweet song that he is singing. It's a love song for you. Your nose too, it becomes free. You can smell the sweet smell of the oil, and while you aren't sure what the smell is, it's wonderful and it's soothing. And Jesus continues to drip water over your head, and it runs down your body, and it begins to loosen the scales. And the scales pull and they tug a bit at your skin, but the scales begin to fall off. But as your body becomes free from the scales, you can feel once again the warmth of God's love. The scales fall to the ground. Imagine that you're standing in a room full of God's love again, with your hands open like you're waiting for a gift. Your eyes are closed and you're soaking all of it in. Just imagine that happening. And the only thing still covered with scales are your feet. And imagine now that Jesus gets down on his knees and he begins to wash your feet. He looks up and smiles at you as the last of the scales fall off. All the icky feelings, all the conflict you felt between you and God are gone. Forgiveness means that we can have peace with God.